and welcome to the Windsor Wednesday show. I'm so excited to kick off this week's guests. At the very top, we have Kevin Limbombe. Kevin is a current law student, and he also is a former varsity athlete at the Lancers football team. So glad to have Kevin on the show today. Thanks, Kevin. And Madhu Yadiki at the bottom. Madhu is a current U-Windsor student ambassador and also a student who is completing her fourth year of biological sciences at the University of Windsor. Thanks for joining today, Madhu. And Aisha Warra is a two-time alumnus from the University of Windsor who completed a Bachelor of Biology and also a Bachelor of Computer Science. Thanks for joining, everyone. Moving on to Kevin, you're currently in law school. Where do you see yourself after you graduate?
Yeah. So Lyndon, thanks for having me on the show. I've definitely been watching a few episodes in preparation for this, and I really enjoy it. So in terms of what I hope to do after law school, with like the mentoring I've been doing and my new appointment with the university's ABR task force, I've really been thinking about this a lot more. First and foremost, I always want to be an example and resource to other young Black men and women as much as possible. Being a first generation immigrant, I had a lot to learn myself going through university. So being able to transfer that knowledge to someone, I want to make it, I want to make their life a lot easier. In terms of like my career, what interests me most right now is distressed mergers and acquisitions. I definitely want to be able to help failing businesses thrive. And before I returned to Windsor, I had the experience of being a part in an acquisition, which was, fascinating in itself. But I really got to see both the pretty and ugly parts of an acquisition. On one hand, I got to like benefit from the tremendous parts of, being a part of a growth engine. But on the other hand, some of my accounts were like being gutted as a result of, the pandemic. So being able to help those companies in similar positions is really what I want to do. Yeah.
So Kevin, give us kind of a behind the scenes look of law school. What is it like? Is it a lot of work? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah. So it definitely is a lot of work, but like university in general is a lot of work. I would say it's a different style of learning. So, for those that, never did, memos in undergrad, or they didn't do, they didn't learn any, legal language, in undergrad, they won't have a problem going into law school. I was lucky because, I was doing, like the remote work at home experience. So I've definitely been able to adjust to, school from home and virtual school. But, a good thing what the law school has definitely done was they definitely were like super prepared. They've gone above and beyond in making sure that, no student feels like they're alone. Every student has their like small study group right now. So they can really rely on those relationships, and they can really make friends with people that they like would have met had they been on campus. So it's definitely been a really good experience in terms of the culture and environment that the law school has brought.
Well, that's fantastic, Kevin. I'm glad you're enjoying your experience in law school. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, for those students who may be undergrad and they're watching this right now and they're looking, hey, should I go to law school in the future? How do I do this? What type of tips do you have for those students?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of tips on the internet, and they're all like super useful. There's 3 tips that I would probably give to all applicants. The first one is probably building genuine relationships with professors and administration as early as possible. The next is involving yourself in things that like truly make a difference. And then the third is probably show your true self in your personal statement. In terms of building relationships, you have to remember that all law schools, most graduate schools in Canada require at least one academic reference. So being able to ask someone that you've built a relationship with is much easier than asking someone who you just did great in their class. I had a professor who only gave academic references for students that received 90 or more in his class. It's safe to say I wasn't up to those standards all the time, but I vividly remember, when I went to go ask him, he was sitting with another student. A student asked, he told him the same thing. I only give 90 or more, but let me check your marks. Student had like an 88 in his class, right? And he unfortunately, told her no, right? So I go into his office right after she leaves. We're talking a little bit. He then asked me, why are you here? I told him, I need an academic reference, because we had built such like a great relationship over, the 3 years that I had been, in his classrooms. He wrote me a phenomenal letter because of it, right? And if I could go extra for those that are introverted in an academic setting, at the start of your semester, go on uwindsor.ca, find your professor's research, read any paper that interests you, and email them that you read it and send them like a genuine critique of the paper. That right there will like plant the seeds to a genuine relationship between you and your professor. At the very least, they'll appreciate that you read their work, and you'll definitely feel more comfortable talking to them. In terms of involving yourself, Windsor Wednesday is a perfect example, right? You don't need to have that amazing internship at RBC or that perfect corporate job for admissions teams to admit you, right? You just have to make sure what you're doing is making a difference or it's providing some form of value to someone, right? And then lastly, your personal statement should show all aspects of yourself, from what you've accomplished, to how you identify, to how you see yourself in the future. So in my case, I wanted admissions teams to unequivocally know that, I'm a Black student athlete that wants to be an example for the next generation. I was able to show that through my volunteering experience, my work in athletics, and my employment at Student Accessibility Services, right? So those are just 3 tips that, I generally tell people that I'm mentoring. There's obviously a bunch out there, but those are like the main 3 that I give people.
Thank you, Kevin. I think that's going to be extremely helpful to those watching. And the law school is definitely lucky to have accepted you and have you in their program to be a leader, especially for Black students, like you did mention. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And I think that's very helpful for students that are considering law school in the future. Kevin, why would you say you're proud to be a University of Windsor student, especially in the law school?
So I've always enjoyed the culture of camaraderie, which students show towards each other on campus. Even though we're all competing for grades, I've always noticed students at Windsor consistently do their best to help struggling students. I remember when I was struggling in my first year, the 5th year players on the football team were super concerned and made sure I was, back good academically. When I was in my final year, I returned the favor. I was looking out for those young players that might have been struggling. And, this happens all over campus, not just varsity teams. In my first year at the law school, like people in the Black Law Students Associations have been doing the exact same thing, making sure, no students left behind, and then on top of that, I was super lucky to be a part of Student Accessibility Services as a proctor. And I'm always super impressed by the extra miles that the advisors, if I could, I'd give a shout out to, Christine, Jocelyn, David, Anthony, they always, put their students in the best positions to succeed and accommodate them. So I really love, that aspect of the faculty and administration. So that's really why I'm UWin proud.
Thank you, Kevin. And I guess in summary from what everyone said, I think the biggest thing that was mentioned by all of you is the support system that's provided through clubs, through different opportunities to help you enhance your skills on campus and as you move into the workforce. So I appreciate each of you for joining me on the show today. And for those watching, thanks for watching this edition of Windsor Wednesday. We'll see you next week.